Is there any discussion? Senator Thielen?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I know it's a little unusual to offer a floor amendment on the final reading of a bill. Normally, the only choice that's in front of us is to vote yes or no on a bill. But I thought about the contents of this bill and the purpose of it and the discussion that we've had up until now. And I'd have to say there's nothing ordinary about this bill. So I didn't want to come in front of you today to say just vote no. I wanted to give everybody a third option. And the third option is to allow us to begin to move forward with the tax collection, but also to keep Airbnb at the table, along with any other broker who wants to be a transient tax collector, to make sure that we can do this or accomplish this in a manner that respects our state laws, our priorities, and our customs. Normally, a floor amendment on third reading would mean the death of a bill, but I want to let you know that we have the identical amendment poised on the House side and people ready to introduce and second that amendment. So if the Senate does pass the floor amendment, the House can consider the same, and we could move forward with passing the amended bill on Thursday, if everyone in this room agrees. As you may recall, when we were on third reading of this bill, we did consider a floor amendment, and we had a long discussion about that floor amendment. And in that floor amendment, it's identical to the one that you see in front of you. It required that Airbnb, or whoever is going to be the internet broker, do more than just ask their hosts to attest that they are in compliance with the law. It actually changed two sections in the bill to say that Airbnb would have to require their hosts to provide written verification that they're in compliance with the law prior to posting. That amendment was the core of what we passed in Senate Draft 3. But that was stripped in the conference committee. We went back to the House proposal, which simply asked the hosts to attest that they're in compliance with the law. I went online this weekend and signed up to be an Airbnb host, just to see what it's like. It took me less than 10 minutes. What took the amount of time is, at first I didn't want to put in my phone number, but it wouldn't let me proceed unless there was a phone number there. Next, I didn't want to put in my email because I was just testing this out. I didn't really want to get anything from the system. It wouldn't let me proceed until I put my email in. Then I didn't want to put a picture of the house in because, again, I'm just testing this out. I intended to pull it back after I got on just to see how hard it was. It wouldn't let me proceed unless I put a picture up. Once I did those three things, I was listed. It took me longer to figure out how to delist my house than it took me to get listed. Airbnb does have fine print that tell their hosts, you have to be in compliance with the law. But we know that that's not been working. We know that people that go on and list ignore that. I have on your desk pictures and information that we passed out before. The Makua campgrounds, the letter from this council members in New York City, the postcard Airbnb was sending out to entice more people to rent through them, even though they know that those would be illegal rentals, and the listing of campgrounds, public beaches, and state lands that my staff found, which Airbnb was removing and then allowing to repost again. If we pass the conference draft without the floor amendment, we're going to be missing an opportunity to keep Airbnb at the table to discuss how do we assure that they meet our standards. And what do I mean by that? We're used to an economy where we have outrigger hotels, other hotels, where the owners, the managers, they live here. If they're not complying with commitments that they made to us, we pick up the phone and we call them. We see them at business meetings. That's not the case with Airbnb. If we pass this bill, they're gone. They're a multi-billion-dollar corporation without a continuing presence in Hawaii. How do we keep them at the table to make sure that they meet our standards? So what are other jurisdictions doing? Because we're not the only place that Airbnb is coming to say, hey, let us collect the taxes for you and pass a law that will allow us to do that. Well, other jurisdictions are saying, you know something? It's not just about the money. They're taking time to negotiate and implement a very comprehensive approach that provides a solution to address the impacts that this new business platform is having on their residents and on their communities and on their culture. San Francisco took a while to negotiate a very comprehensive approach with Airbnb and have been working with the company to implement that, to make sure that they're meeting the city's priorities and policies and standards. We will look foolish in comparison to San Francisco if we pass this bill without laying any expectations upon the company and other companies and saying what do they need to do in order to conduct business here. Los Angeles is in the middle of discussions with Airbnb, and they've been taking their time because they've been watching about what's happening in other cities, and they're saying, gee, you know, you're not meeting the compacts that you've reached in these other cities. So they're proposing a rule that not only says that they're going to fine hosts for violating their laws and policies and standards, they're going to fine the internet platform as well. We're going to look foolish compared to Los Angeles if we pass this bill that says we just want to take the tax money and turn a blind eye to the other problems that are being caused in our communities. Los Angeles, New York, Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, New Orleans, Austin, Texas, and many, many more are demanding that this company step up and meet certain standards and priorities. We need the opportunity to flesh out the standards and priorities and laws and methods that we're going to require these internet platforms to operate by in Hawaii to make sure that we don't lose our state beaches, our parks, our wilderness lands, and other state lands to commercialization. I put a new item in the package that's on your desk. It's an article in the Star Advertiser about the problems caused in Kalalau by the illegal camping. Some of you may have seen it, but for those of you that missed it, illegal campers often transported to Kalalau by commercial boat or watercraft are wreaking havoc on cultural and natural resources. They hauled out trash over 2 months, 2,400 pounds. But more disturbing is the fact that these illegal campers are dismantling and destroying heiau and agricultural compounds in Kalalau because they're taking the rocks to create fire rings at the campsites. In discussions with DLNR, this is not the only area where they're having problems. When this article appeared, DLNR got calls about illegal camping and commercial operators that are taking people there to Nulolokai, Miloli'i. They've had problems with cultural destruction in Kealakekua Bay, Kihola Wilderness Area, McKenna. How many more areas are going to be open to this if we don't insist that Airbnb and other internet brokers that want to operate here have to sit down and negotiate standards with us and enforceable standards? Why on earth wouldn't we follow the practice in these other jurisdictions to lay these out? Now, I know in many of the other jurisdictions, a lot of the standards that they've set have been around housing. And I know some of you have said to me, this bill is about state revenue, housing is a county issue. Well, I want to remind you, the Senate majority set a number of priorities at the beginning of this session. Malama Ohana, providing for families. We will focus on strengthening our communities by identifying the state's affordable housing supply. We will also identify and prioritize strategies to supply sufficient levels of housing for Hawaii's residents. Senate Bill 2561. establishes a goal of developing or investing the development of at least 22,500 affordable rental housing units between 2017 and 2026. In the budget, $12 million for homeless programs, $3 million general funds to public housing, $1.1 million general fund for rental assistance services and housing vouchers. And the list goes on and on and on. If housing is not a state priority, then why is it in our priority? Why is it one of the top priorities in our budget? Airbnb's standard practice is let us list. We'll collect your hotel taxes, and then we'll leave a mess for you to clean up. That was fine when it was two guys operating air mattresses out of their apartment in San Francisco many years ago. They are now a multi-billion-dollar international corporation. It's time for them to grow up. It's time for them to come to the grown-up table and to negotiate with the other grown-ups about responsible business practices that they will abide by, that they will make sure that their hosts who are listing on them meet those standards, or else they won't allow them to post their hosting, just like I couldn't post my hosting if I didn't put in my phone number. Surely we should have higher standards than just a phone number, an email address, and a picture of a home. Airbnb is not going to voluntarily agree to come to the table. They are resisting in these other jurisdictions. But these other jurisdictions are making them do so. For those of you who say, oh, it's an internet platform, they can't put in a filter, they already have filters. I talked to my brother who's a computer programmer who worked for Martin Marietta, for Microsoft, and has run his own programming company for over 25 years. Not a problem to put in filters in a computer program that would block a listing until you get approval of something where it's legal. Not a problem to block illegal camping on public lands. Not an expensive thing for them to put into their business platform, and it's being asked of them by hundreds of jurisdictions around the world that are tired of being left to clean up their mess. Airbnb is not the only one that needs to step up. We need to step up as legislators. They are coming to us to ask us to pass a law that favors their business model. Why on earth would we agree to that and let them turn around and walk out of our state without also setting some standards for them? This amendment that's being proposed right now puts back in the core provision that we voted to support in Senate Draft 3. The beauty of this amendment is it keeps Airbnb here in Hawaii. We can begin working on the agreement between them and DOTAX. We can begin working out the details on the standards that they're going to comply with. It allows us to move forward. It's not just stopping this dead in the water, but it's saying that if you want us to pass a law that favors your business model, then we expect you to sit down at the table with us and develop the standards by which you're going to operate here to make sure that we protect our state laws, our state priorities, our state culture. I know I'm being a nuisance about this bill, and I know a lot of you just want me to just sit down, but this is so important. These priorities are so important, and they affect so many people in our state, and it affects them in their daily lives. We shouldn't rush to say we want just the tax money and let them walk. We should follow the practice in these other jurisdictions and start the negotiations. Please pass the floor amendment. I ask for your support. We can then notify the House if we do pass it, and then we can move forward with some serious discussions about solid business standards to protect our state interests. Mahalo.
Senator Thielen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a follow-up point of clarification. The senator from Wahiawa this is not a matter of taking jurisdiction away from counties. It's actually an amendment that was supported by the City and County of Honolulu and also the County of Kauai, that they wanted to have the ability to make sure that these units were legal, and so it's supporting the county's position on this. Mahalo.